Welcome to Fenwick and West's presentation regarding COVID-19 and the key securities law considerations for life sciences companies. I'm Rob Freedman, the co-chair of Fenwick's Capital Markets and Public Companies Group and a partner in the Life Sciences Group. I'm joined virtually by my colleague, Amanda Rose.
Thanks, Rob. I'm Amanda. I'm also a partner in Fenwick's Capital Markets and Public Companies Group and a member of our Life Sciences Group.
Amanda and I represent many public life sciences companies, and they've been reaching out to us with questions about what the response to the global spread of COVID-19 means for their business. We are all responding in real time to a quickly changing situation. In this brief broadcast, Amanda and I will cover the securities law considerations that should be top of mind for our clients.
During this brief presentation, we plan to touch on how life sciences companies are being impacted and the appropriate considerations for governance, IR and PR matters, SEC reporting, and capital raising.
COVID-19 is impacting all aspects of our clients' businesses. Life sciences companies are seeing their businesses disrupted in many ways. We are seeing clinical trial and study delays, particularly with respect to patient enrollment and dosing, cash runway concerns, regulatory filing delays, manufacturing supply chain disruptions, employment productivity impacts, periodic reporting and financial statement preparation delays, and internal control impacts, to name a few. There is also uncertainty around shelter-in-place exemptions around the world. This makes it difficult to keep business running in a timely manner, among other things. The SEC has recently put out guidance with respect to COVID-19. On March 25th, the SEC extended its exemptions for delaying filings. Companies may delay the filings of their 10Ks, 10Qs, or proxy statements due before July 1st, 2020, if delayed because of COVID-19. The SEC has also stressed that companies need to address the impacts and risks of COVID-19 in periodic reports. The SEC Enforcement Division also announced it is on heightened alert for Regulation FD and insider trading violations. The FDA has also recently released guidance for life sciences companies. For instance, the FDA noted that companies may need to modify or suspend current trials to ensure patient safety and data integrity. The guidance also outlines when to discuss modifications with the FDA.
There are also important governance considerations during this time. It will be important to engage your board more frequently, in part to tap their expertise, but also for the additional oversight during this crucial time. It will be important to keep them informed of the impacts and disruptions, as Rob just described. Some of the things that we've been seeing boards do is hold regular weekly board meetings to address impacts and disruptions. We've seen clients sending regular email updates to their board, and we've also seen other boards delegate this oversight duty to a risk committee, either a newly formed committee just to address these disruptions and impacts, or to a previously established risk committee. It's also important during this time to engage with your disclosure committee frequently, both to discuss the impacts and make sure that the management team is aware, the whole management team is aware of any impacts facing the business, and also to address additional disclosure obligations. And to that point, it's also important to discuss this with your counsel on a regular basis. I know Rob and I have been having conversations almost daily with clients with respect to COVID-19 impacts and related disclosure obligations. We've been monitoring the precedent disclosure from other companies, whether it be through 8Ks, press releases, investor calls, and we are able to work with our companies to quickly understand what their impacts are and what the best course of action is in terms of disclosure, talking to investors, updating other public materials.
Public life sciences companies are facing various IR and PR considerations during this time. Under Regulation FD, management cannot selectively disclose material non-public information to the investment community. As always, selectively disclosing changes to guidance on milestones, timelines, cash runway, for example, is problematic. But also confirming runway and timelines as being on track especially where there have been critical intervening world events, can also be deemed selective disclosure of material non-public information. As we noted before, the SEC is watching, so tread carefully with investors and analysts. First, consider putting out press releases or 8Ks to disclose material non-public information in advance of one-on-one investor discussions. Furthermore, consider investor or analyst update calls or virtual conference presentations that are simultaneously webcast and disclosed in advance via press release. Finally, companies can consider disclosing at their next regularly scheduled public investor conference material information if one is coming up in the near term. Relatedly, companies should be considering closing their trading window after carefully analyzing material non-public information before insider purchases or sales. Information is coming in fast to various people within your organization, so we suggest being conservative with the company's insider trading window.
There are also a number of important periodic reporting considerations. First and foremost, we should consider the impacts of COVID-19 and the related risks on disclosure in your 10K and 10Q. For 1231 year-end companies, your 10Ks are on file, so you'll be looking at largely the risk factors, MD&A, and financial statement portions of your 10Q. For those that have not filed your 10K yet, COVID impacts could potentially implicate each major section of your 10K. In looking at risk factors, think about risks and risk factors beyond just a new COVID risk factor, which we recommend for all companies at this point. But also think about your existing risk factors related to your development and regulatory timelines, CMC manufacturing, enrollment, internal controls. Also things like your ability to raise capital, the sufficiency of your capital if your runway has been impacted, and other financial impacts. You'll also want to think about COVID impacts in MD&A and on your financial statements and financial position. Things to keep in mind are impacts on runway, on your sufficiency of and your ability to raise additional capital, especially in a potentially challenging market. Whether there are any delays of milestone achievements and any related impacts on runway or revenue that those will have. Have there been impacts on internal controls, inability to meet any debt covenants, any material reductions in force or employee layoffs, or any material good impairments, particularly to goodwill. All of those different topics or any other impacts on your financial statements should be addressed and disclosed in MD&A. If you are a company who's filing your 10K, it'll be important to take a look at your business section and update any development or regulatory milestones, any delays or modifications in your clinical trials or studies, protocol amendments, regulatory disclosure, all of that could be impacted. And if there are material updates to the business, we recommend including those material updates in the MD&A overview of your 10Q if your 10K is already on file. You'll obviously also want to take a look at your forward-looking statements, and to the extent there are impacts on your financial statements, you want to look at your financial statement, include the financial statements included in your 10K or 10Q, as well as evaluate whether any subsequent event disclosure is needed. Another issue that we're seeing arise for most of our public companies is the determination of whether to hold their annual meeting as a virtual meeting or in person. Traditionally, proxy advisors like ISS and Glass Lewis have discouraged virtual meetings, but this year, in light of COVID-19, if you state in your proxy statement that you are moving to a virtual annual meeting option due to COVID-19 and the safety and health of your investors, they're going to give you a pass. So we're recommending that everyone at least has a virtual meeting option, if not moving entirely to a virtual meeting this year. If your proxy statement is already filed and with an in-person meeting, you can change that to a virtual meeting. We recommend doing that by issuing a press release stating that you're changing to a virtual meeting and including instructions on how to access the meeting, as well as filing that press release as additional soliciting material, which is a DEF 14A filing with the SEC. You should also consider some of the lesser known or less often 8K triggers. Those include, acceleration of financial obligations, notice of stock exchange noncompliance, trading prices have been down, and if your trading price is below $1 for 30 consecutive trading days, you will receive a notice of noncompliance from your exchange, which will trigger an 8K. If you've experienced any goodwill impairment, material layoffs, any sort of material changes in executive compensation, for example, executives taking reduced salary, or any other material updates that you would like to file on an 8K, either to incorporate by reference into a prospectus, or maybe you want to disclose impacts or the uncertainty of impacts in an 8K through an Item 701 filing as opposed to a press release. Those would all be appropriate uses of an 8K right now.
Even in down markets, life science companies may need to finance. Public companies can raise equity in many ways. First, the underwritten public offering, which is usually accomplished under a shelf registration statement. In that situation, the company will need all material COVID-19 impacts to be disclosed in a preliminary prospectus before offering the securities. Next, ATMs and registered direct offerings are also typically made off of a shelf, but normally do not involve filing a new preliminary prospectus at the time of offering. So be prepared in advance. Companies will need to update prospectuses by filing an 8K with material updates before the ATM is used or before the registered direct offering is priced. The 8Ks are incorporated by reference into an existing historical prospectus. In addition, companies may decide to pursue a PIPE, which is a private offering to a smaller set of sophisticated investors. The company will normally need, though, to cleanse material non-public information related to the investors sometime shortly after the offering. This can be done via an 8K, but perhaps also waiting until the next 10K or 10Q. Obviously, you should expect that COVID-19 impacts will be a focus of investor and investment bank diligence for all types of offerings. That brings us to the end of our presentation. We thank you for joining us and hope you found this broadcast informative. We will share the slide deck and the recording of this presentation on fenwick.com.
Please reach out to us with any questions directly by phone or email, both of which are included in the slideshow accompanying this broadcast. We also encourage you to visit Fenwick's COVID-19 Resource Center for our latest guidance, which can be found on our website, www.fenwick.com.